Some of you, I'm going to collect the homework not now, at the end of the class. Some of you, the one from last week. So some of you, not this one, from last week, okay? Some of you said that you have difficulty printing, even though I said in principle, I want a hard copy, it's okay. If you have difficulty printing, just email it to me before Monday morning. Okay, so because I'm going to go through them Monday morning, so I want to have everybody's by Monday morning. So if you have difficulty printing, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. Just email it to me, but before Monday morning. Okay?
Okay. Right.
Yes.
Thank you. The police department.
Okay. The reason I'm not doing it now is that I want to do them. It's the plan. I'm going to do all of them 2 weeks from today as part of a review for the exam. This is exactly the reason that I don't want to do it now. Because if I do now, I have to do it again 2 weeks from now. What I want to do is I want to finish the new material. As I said, this one is a homework problem. Feel free to collaborate if you don't know, if you want to make sure that what you submit is correct. Feel free to compare your answers with somebody else who knows how to do it to make sure it's correct. Because now I'm giving you technically if you do it, an extension until Monday morning. So just feel free to make sure that what you submit is correct. But the reason that I'm not doing it today is intentional. Is that, again, everybody please be quiet. The reason that I'm not doing it today is intentional. So this way, if I finish what I'm planning to present today, then next class is primarily review. So you'll have an opportunity for me to go through the problems that I'm going to ask you in the exam one by one. It's better this way. Okay, so there is a reason. Okay, final topic that I have planned for today, but this is a long one. We won't be able to do it in an hour. We're going to start it today, but finish it next time, is project management. So, we've done, so today we have already, be quiet please. From last week, we had the leftover, which was production planning. So I did half of it last week, the other half, which was the matching plan, and I finished it this week by doing the levelized plan. Then we did flows of machine schedule, finished. The next and final topic that I have scheduled to be done today is project management. That's a long one, so I'm going to start it today, and then next week I'm going to definitely finish it, because I don't want to have any new material covered before the exam. I'll do the bulk of it today, but knowing how long it is, I won't be able to finish it, so part of it has to be done next week. Project management is covered in the textbook that Professor Martinez is using. So project management is covered here. So I'm going to use this book for assigning homework problems. So I'm going to use my own. Well, this one, again, homework problem is one problem is going to help you learn the material. So I'm going to do only a problem if I finish it today. If I don't finish it today, obviously, it's going to be deferred to next time.
Homework, right?
Pardon me?
This is homework?
Yes. Right now, let's do, to summarize, what I've already asked you to do as homework problems for next week is 3 problems. The 2 problems, one matching plan and one levelized plan from production planning, and this one. So far, this is it. So I may assign another one if I finish project management today. If I don't, then I'm going to defer. I'm going to do it the next time. So first of all, let me give you some general background information about project management. So project management, as you can imagine, I'm going to leave this for a few more minutes. So I'll use this board. So as I said, project management is a topic that crosses disciplines. That means it's not project management is not a topic limited to manufacturing or service. So project management is a cross-disciplinary topic to give you areas where project management is prevalent. The 2 areas where it's most prevalent is software development. So software development is usually done as if it were a project. To give you an example, how advanced software development is today, software is developed in modules. So usually the companies that are primarily involved in software development are stationed, located, if you want, in Silicon Valley. And most of those companies have a subsidiary halfway around the world in India. So why are they doing that? Because what they do is they want to have software, developing software code 24/7. So if you check the time difference between California and India, it's 12 hours. So what happens is you have modularized software development. That means the team in California works during their normal working hours. So when they finish around 5, 6 p.m., it's already 5, 6 a.m. over there. So they email the information, how far they have gone with the project, and then the Indian team takes over. So for them, then when they finish, when it's 5, 6 p.m. their time, it's back to the next day here. So what they have done by the major software companies, by having teams located in 2 different locations in the globe, 12 hours apart, what they have accomplished 24/7. So, of course, that was not the only factor. It was, of course, the human capital in India, because India has made tremendous progress in software development, so in services in general, and software development in particular. But the fact that they are located 12 hours apart from California is a major benefit to have 24/7 software development. So, sorry, yes. I don't know that. I mean, that's, I assume they pay wages which are prevailing wages in that country, obviously. But again, that's an industry that works 24/7. Because somebody's going to say, how can somebody work 24/7 on software development? Impossible. It's a very intense and how can you say, brain intensive. It requires a lot of focus, energy, and so on. But because it's so complicated today, it's so how do you say, complicated is not the right word. It's so advanced. It's so high level task. So you need to have the opportunity. In software development, another issue, of course, is debugging, to figure out if something is wrong and so on. So by having teams who are not, the team which is debugging usually is not the one which developed the most. And this way you can have all of this cross-checking and so on. So the whole software development industry is operating under the terms of, under the principles of, if you want, of project management. So developing code is treated as a project. That's one industry. As I said, there are 2 industries where project management techniques are prevalent. The other one is closer to home, construction management. So when we do construction projects also meet the basic requirements of a project. Why? What is a construction project? Let's assume building a house. It's interrelated activities. So you have to start with the foundation, then you have to go to the walls, then you have to go to the ceiling, then you have to go to the windows, then you have to go to electric, to plumbing. So each one of those activities cannot start until other activities have already finished. So that interrelation of activities also generates a project. So that's the reason that I said before, you're going to see a mathematical abstract model and say, where is it applicable? So it's applicable throughout business functions. But the 2 prevalent ones, as I said, is software development and construction. So the examples that I'm going to use here are more applicable to construction projects. Because in construction projects, you can see the physical sequence of tasks. As I said, foundation, walls, ceiling, windows, and then we go inside. We start the wiring. Usually we start with plumbing, which is more heavy duty, and then we do electric, and then we do the fields. So that's a sequence of activities which are interrelated, and they go into a certain order. So that's the topic today, project management. But before we get to this one, what I want to do, I want to show you a little bit, before we get to project management, if we take a more holistic approach from a business standpoint, project management is the techniques we use to manage a project. But what is this usually preceded by in an industry environment? Well, first what we have to do is to have to do project selection. So as I said, in both industries, software and construction, So in software, we say, let's develop a code for which can do this particular task. Or in construction, which is easier for me to give you practical examples, let's build this house. So the first thing we have to decide, should we do it, yes or no? So that's a part of project management, which is called project selection. So before we decide what is the best way to manage a project, we have to decide, should we engage into this project? So should we select? So remember, we always have the option to say no. So project management is always preceded by project selection. So in that phase, before we even start managing the project, we have to decide, as a company, should we undertake the project? So what is the primary criterion that we use to decide if we should undertake the project? Financial. So the primary criterion that we use is financial. So usually projects entail an initial investment in the anticipation of future earnings. Yes?
Is there any difference between project management and program management?
A project is a more general concept of a program. So a program is a special case of a project. So a project, as I said, comprises software, comprises construction, comprises other issues. So project is a generic term. Program is a more specific term. So as I said, the criteria that we use to decide whether or not to select a project are financial. So usually a project, for example, in some other industries, project is what is a project? An introduction of a new product. So if you treat the introduction of a new product as a project, then the cash flow is pretty much dichotomous. What do I mean by that? Initially, outflows. You have to pay money to develop the product, the new product. You have to pay R&D money. Then, what is the anticipation? If the product makes it into the market, then you have the sales. So the future sales have to compensate for the initial investment. And the criteria, as I said, they use, because this is usually a financial analysis that we do, is we have to factor in what else also? The time value of money. So we say, if you have a project and we spend 10 million today to develop it, and if the future sales are exactly equal to 10 million, it's not good enough. Because the outflow of the money is today, the inflows of the money is in the future. So it has to be a little bit more. So if we factor in the present value of money, if we take those future cash flows in today's dollars, the net result must be positive. So that's beyond the scope of this class. But I'm telling you, before we decide how to manage a project, first we have to decide if we should even undertake this project. Should we even decide as a company, as an organization, to implement this project? And as I said, the answer is yes or no, based primarily on financials. Somebody's going to say, is only financials driving this? No, it's also expertise. I mean, if we are a company that focuses, specializes in a certain industry, and there is a project totally unrelated to our core business, sometimes the answer is no. You say, I don't want to do it because that would be a distraction to my core business. So even if it's profitable, sometimes organizations turn down projects if they are not essential, related, if you want, to their core business. And sometimes, by not doing it, some companies are enticed by the financial benefits to undertake a project that is not related to their core business, and sometimes that is a distraction, and companies realize the hard way that they shouldn't have done it in the first place, even if it's profitable. Why? Because it's a distraction, it's taking away the focus from the main business. Examples. The examples are numerous, so I'll give you one again from the airline industry. So around 10-15 years ago, some airlines decided to say, why don't we become conglomerates and we start owning hotels? So this way we can, or rental cars, this way we can become an integrated business. And they realized that was taken away from their core business. So what was the optimal solution? Alliances. So now what they do, they sold them, hotels and so on, but they have alliances. So when you buy an airline ticket, if you try to buy it online, you always say, do you want a car? And if you say yes, they drive you to a specific website. Let's say each airline has an alliance with a specific car rental company. Or do you want a hotel in this city? If you click yes, they send you to a specific hotel chain. So initially, the idea, the business philosophy was, let me be a travel conglomerate. I should own. a car rental company, a hotel chain, and an airline. In fact. So now they say, what is the optimal solution? I don't want, in case there is a customer who wants a package and they're willing to buy it from me, I want to reap the benefits, some type of commissions. So what is the optimal solution they came up with today? I'm still an airline, but I forge alliances with both a car rental company and a hotel chain. So if somebody wants integrated services, they want a package, through my website, they can buy it. But I don't own that company, I just get a commission. So that's the solution today. When it comes to projects, undertaking projects, the primary criterion is always financial, because if the project is not going to be giving us a positive cash flow, there is no need for it. But besides financial, before we make a decision, the project must be related to our core business. If it's not related to our core business, it's going to be a distraction. It's going to dilute our resources. It's going to take our best people to work on something they are not experts. So that's not the best way to do business. Okay, back to home now. So let's assume we have decided to undertake a project. What is the problem on hand today? What is the best way to manage a project? So let's come up with what constitutes a project. As I said, a project is a list. Yes. It's a more general definition. I'll say it's a list of interrelated activities. So if I take, for example, a project is going to be given usually in a list of activities like this. So let's say we have activities. For each activity, we need to know predecessors. So let me put a list here, immediate predecessors. And another piece of information we need for each activity is duration, how long this activity is going to take. So let me use a numerical example from my own textbook, but then when it comes to homework problems, I will give you I'll give you homework problems from the textbook that Professor Martinez is using. So let me use just now a numerical example to present the material.
Yay.
Okay, so I'll use a specific, I just want to use the same numbers that I have used before, and I know that there is a solution. So it's given, again, as I said, we're given for each a list of activities.
Pay attention. Silence.
Okay, so a project will be given in a table like this. That means the project, this particular one, is comprised of activities A, B, C, D, E, F, G. In this column, it says what are the immediate predecessors for each one of those activities. I'll explain that in a minute. And in this column is the length, how long it takes to do each one of the activities. A is 10 time units, B is 7, C is 5, and so on. So let me explain this one. What do I mean by the term immediate predecessor? Let me give you, forget this project for a time being. Let's assume we have an activity A, and we represent the activity as an arrow between 2 points, between 1 and 2. And then we say, when A is completed, we can start B. So B is between 2 and 3. And when B is completed, we can start another one, C. And this is the end. So let's say, this has nothing to do with that one. It's a separate example. Don't try to link this one to that one. This has nothing to do with that one. So I'm taking a completely different example to make the point. So let's assume we have a project which is a sequence, A, B, C. And those are points in time. So in this case, we say A is an immediate predecessor to B. What does it mean? A precedes B, but when I use the word immediate predecessor, there is nothing between A and B. When A is completed, B can start. By the same terminology, B is an immediate predecessor to C. That means when B is completed, C can be started. But that predecessor property is transitive. What does it mean? If A is an immediate predecessor to B, and B is an immediate predecessor to C, then A is also a predecessor to C, but not immediate. So why A is not an immediate? A is a predecessor to C, but not immediate. Why not immediate? Because B is in the middle. So you see how it works. Immediate predecessor means there is nothing in the between. So A is an immediate predecessor to B, means there is nothing between A and B. B is an immediate predecessor to C, means there is nothing between B and C. C immediately follows B. But look at, this is transitive. That means if A is an immediate predecessor to B, and B is an immediate predecessor to C, then A is also a predecessor to C, but not immediate. So in mathematics, we call this a transitive property. So a transitive property works very well with numbers. We say if 4 is, let's say if 4 is less than 6, and 6 is less than 10, 4 is less than 10. So something like that. So that property is transitive. So the predecessor property is transitive. So transitive is a very powerful property when we deal with numbers. When we deal with quantities which we can compare. If A is less than B, and B is less than C, A is less than C. So here, what does it mean? If A is before B, B is before C, A is also before C. But be careful of the word immediate. So immediate means that there is nothing. If A is an immediate predecessor to B, B follows A, there is nothing between A and B. B is an immediate predecessor to C, B is before C, or equivalently, C is after B, there is nothing between the two of them. But A is a predecessor to C, but not immediate. That means there is something in the between. So that transitive property, just to make a joke, is prevalent, as I said, when we deal with numbers. There is an area where many of you are interested. It doesn't work in sports. So you see, we say if team A beats B and B beats C, that doesn't mean if A plays C, they will beat them. You see what I'm saying? Sometimes it works when you deal with numbers. But you cannot make an assumption if in a certain point somebody beats another player and another team beats another team, you cannot say, oh, this one will always beat them. That doesn't work this way. But with numbers, it always works this way, that numbers are fixed amounts. And here it works, of course, with those activities. Why do we need to know that? Because if we know that, I can use this information to convert this into a graph. What I want to do now is to convert this into a graph. Now, the conversion of this table into a graph is relatively difficult. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to do it, FYI. But just to ease your fears, in the exam situation, I'm not going to give you this in a table format. In an exam, I will give you the graph. So right now I want to show you how this information is being converted from a table to a graph. But I'm just giving you heads up so you don't have to worry. Say, I don't know how to do it. You don't need to, it's good for you to understand it, but it's not a requirement for you to know how to do it. So I'm just letting you know ahead of time, before you get nervous about it, that I will give you, in an exam, I'll give you the graph. So right now I'll show you how I can convert this information from a table into a graph. But I'm just giving you heads up. I will give you the graph directly. So let me show you now how this is converted. So when we start, we say, do we have any activities that have no So do we have any activities that have no predecessors? Because those two can start immediately. The answer is yes. So here, which activities have no predecessors? A and B. So A and B can start immediately. So a project will be like a graph. There will be a starting point and there will be a terminal point. So let's assume we start somewhere here. Always the starting point is 1. So we define 1 as the starting point. So in this particular project, there are two activities which have no predecessor. So those two can start immediately. So we start both A and B. Immediately, because there is no predecessor. Then, what do we do next? Then we try to draw activities which have only A or only B as predecessors, because A and B are already on the board. So then we say, can we draw any activity that has only A or B? Look up there, which one qualifies? C and D. Both C and D have A. So if this is the terminal point for A, an activity will be always an arrow between two nodes. Those circles are called formally nodes. So here is a new node. Forget the number. I'll work with the numbers later. And I can start both C and D. Because according to the information up there, both C and D have only A as their immediate predecessor. What does it mean? If A is completed, we can start C and D. Now what it says there, that E has B and C as predecessors. So you see how difficult it is. That's the reason I'm going to give you the graph. I'm better off to flip-flop them, to put D on the top and C at the bottom. So I'll convert this to D and name this C. And I can have E, look at this one. E has both B and C as immediate predecessors. So I can have B and C merged into a node here. And I have E coming out of there. That's the reason I said I'm not going to ask you to draw the graph. I'm just showing you how it is done. But for you, you're going to get the finished product as input. So I will give you the graph. So again, one more time. I'm doing it here, but I'm not going to ask you to do it. I'll give you the graph. I'm just showing you if it's given like this, how we convert it into a graph. It's good to know, but it's not a requirement. For you, the version of the problem will start when the graph is done. So right now I'm working on it, but when I finish the graph, I say, this is the starting point for us. The starting point, if we have the graph, to figure out how much time it's going to take us to finish. So right now, what I did, I have E here, I have D there. What's left? F after D. And then G has E as a predecessor. And G after E. Now, somebody's going to argue with me. All the activities are done. Those two point to nowhere. When we have a situation where all activities are done, and you have some activities pointing to nowhere, what do? We merge them into a final node, which is the end of the project. That's it. So I will give you this. So someone's going to say, it's not complete. What is missing? The numbers. Let's put some numbers for the nodes. We always start with number 1. And there is just one restriction when we number the nodes. We should always go from, for each activity should go from a smaller number to a higher number. For example, let's take activity C. It would be wrong to put a 3 there and a 2. That would be wrong. Why? Because C will go from 3 to 2. But there is a convention. Each activity should go from a smaller number to a higher number. Since C goes from this point to that point, I have no choice to put 2 there and 3. Because each activity... The steps. I'm just finishing the numbers. As I said, if I put a 3 and a 2, C will be going from 3 to... Look at it. Goes down. Look at where it goes.
That's the flow, right?
The flow. The flow should be...
I'm sorry, I thought it was duration.
No. The durations are not on the...
They coincided that it was
Yeah.
5.
The flow should be smaller to higher. Here I have a choice. It doesn't matter if I put 4 here and 5 there, or the other way around. So, because I'm not violating any rule. The rule is the flow is each activity goes from a smaller number to a bigger number. So here I have a choice. I can put 4 and 5 anywhere I want. And this is 6. Okay. All of this, as I said, is optional for you to know how to do it. I will give you the problem from that point on. So for us, for the exam, for the homework, the problem starts here. So I'll give you a complete graph like this one. So now, what is the first step when we have the graph? The first step when we have the graph is to copy the durations. Remember those numbers, the durations? Let's put them on the graph. So next to each activity, For example, A, I'll open a parenthesis and I put the 10. Where am I reading the 10? Up there. So next to each activity now,
Professor, I'm sorry. I'm lost. Oh, yeah.
as I said,
No.
this will be given. This will be given.
I don't know where you got F and G from. It's not on the, only from here.
It's up there, you guys. You put it down.
It's there. It's there. So as I said, assume. So what I'm saying is, in order to minimize confusion, the starting point of the problem is this. Somebody will give us this graph. So they say, consider a project that is represented by this graph. What is the information that this graph is, the information that the graph is giving us? The information is giving us the following graph. It's telling us how, when the project starts, which activities you can start immediately, A and B, because that's the starting point. So then, what are the information, for example, C? Is there any restriction on C? Look at the graph. Yes, in order to start C, we have to finish A. Why? Because look at where C starts at 2. But A finishes at 2. So this is a restriction. In order to start C, A must be completed. In real life, what does it mean? A must be the foundation, C is the walls. Something like that. In order to start building the walls in a house, you have to finish the foundation. Just to give you an example. So E, is there any restriction on E? Looking at this graph, forget the table. The table is irrelevant now. I'm giving you the graph directly. The starting point is the graph. So, is there any restriction on E looking at the graph? Yes. In order to start E, starts at this point, both B and C have to be completed. So this is the information that we're reading by looking at the graph. F, is there any restriction on F? Yes, in order to start F, B should be finished. G, is there any restriction of G? Yes, in order to start G, E has to be finished. So the graph is the starting point. So what is the graph? The graph is a visual representation of the project. What information about the project do we get by looking at the graph? Which of the activities can start immediately? A and B. And what is the restrictions for the remaining activities? Restriction means which activity should be completed before another one can be started. And the final piece of information we get by looking at the graph, when is the project finished? Which activities decide the project is over? F and G. When both F and G are done, we're done. Okay, so as I said, I gave that version for those of you, if you see in the book, because in the other book some projects are given in a table. And you say, the professor told me the project is given as a graph. In some cases, it's given in a table format like this. That means activities and predecessors. That information suffices to convert this into a graph. But for the requirements of this class, the project will always be given as a graph. So the initial step, I'm going to skip. I'm going to give you the project at this point, at this version. I'm going to give you the project as a graph. So the first question I'm asking you, what information about the project can we obtain by looking at the graph? Answer, we can see when we can start, which activities are the starting points of the graph. What are the requirements for intermediate activities? That is, when can we start an intermediate activity? Only when we finish its predecessors. And the final piece of information, when is the project over? The project is over when both F and G in this case are done. Okay, so if we are given the project as a graph, what is the first step? The first step is to copy the durations from the table, put it in the graph. So that's what I started doing. For A, I took the value. You see that 10? Let's put it within parentheses. What does it mean? It means that A is going to take 10 time units. Okay, what is the value for B? 7. So for each activity, I'm taking the number, I'm just copying the numbers from there and I put it here. C, 5.
D is 13.
D is 13.
E is 4. F is 12.
And the last one is 14.
Yes, sir.
12. Here.
F is 12. And the last one
G is 14.
So
Or,
for the test, we have to know how to read now. We have to know how to read the graph.
yeah, I mean, to read, that means just looking at it, remember all the activities are arrows pointing from one point to the other point. So the only information is, the only knowledge is to see what does it mean. What does it mean? It means what I just said. We have a project that starts when A and B start and ends when F and G are finished. So we have what is this project? The project is, we start here. This is the point where we start building the house. So those are the first two things we have to do. To dig the foundation, if you want, and do some preliminaries. This is on the other end. That means we paint the house and we're done with it.
If I know how to read the numbers in the notes, then I know which process goes first, second, third.
That's exactly what it tells you. A and B are
I was not clear on that.
A and B are at the beginning, F and G are towards the end. Okay, so now what is the problem? After we copy the numbers of the graph, the problem is very simple. How long is it going to take to complete this project? How much time is it going to take to finish the project? So that's the question. We have to figure out how much time is going to take to finish the project. So this is usually the information, the most important piece of information that we have to make about the project is the duration, the length of the project. So the first question, as I said, I want to start it to do the preliminaries today. The rest will be done next week, next time. But I want to do the preliminaries today. So the very first piece of information is how long it's going to take to finish the project. So, and more important, what are the activities that decide the duration of the project? So let me give you some. I chose a problem which is relatively small, because for a small problem, I can answer this question in a non-scientific way, by enumerating. I'm going to enumerate all possible paths, and I'm going to figure out how long it's going to take simply by observation. But then I'm going to tell you that this quick way of figuring out how to solve this problem, to determine how long it's going to take, is not going to work if I give you a project with hundreds of activities. But the principle is still the same. So what is the principle? To say how long it's going to take to finish the project. In other words, if we use a visual analogy, how many different ways we have to get from 1 to 6? So let's name the different ways we have to get from 1 to 6 using not the nodes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, using the activities. So each different way to get us from 1 to 6 is called a path. So how many different paths, how many different ways we have to get from 1 to 6 using activities? One path is A, B, F. Will you agree with me?
Yes.
That, assume it's a walk. If you take a walk from A to D to F, you'll be able to get from 1 to 6. So that's a walk. It's called a path. So what I'm doing here is I'm enumerating all the possible paths. So one path is A, D, F. Will you agree with me? That's a path leading from 1 to 6. Can somebody enumerate, list another path leading from 1 to 6? B, E, G. Any other one, or that's it?
A, C, E, G.
Shortest path, or
We'll get to that. So right now, what we're doing, we're not evaluating the paths. We're enumerating. Enumerating means list all the paths. So one more.
A, C, E, G.
Yeah.
So what am I doing here? We're enumerating the paths. Yes.
to get E, don't you need B though?
Say that again.
To get E, don't you need B?
Yeah, but now again.
B, C, D, F.
So to rephrase your question, am I missing? Are those complete paths? A path is complete if it's a continuous walk from 1 to 6. Each one of those paths qualify. It's a continuous walk from 1 to 6. If you follow any of those paths, what do these paths have in common? All of them originate at 1. All of them terminate at 6. And there are no gaps. They are continuous. You don't, I mean, if that was missing, if somebody said BG is incomplete, yes, you start at 1, but then there is a gap. So a path qualifies as an eligible path if it's a continuous walk from 1 to 6. So right now we're enumerating. So I'm saying, what are all the possible ways to get from 1 to 6? Qualifications. You have to start at 1, you have to end at 6, and it has to be a continuous path. You cannot jump. It has to be a continuous walk. Am I missing anyone, or I have all of them?
B, C, B,
B? No. I'll tell you why not.
No, because
look
the
at what.
activity.
The arrows are one way. It's a
The
one-way
activity.
street. So B, it doesn't let you go back. But it's good that you mention it so I can tell you why not. Each one of those are one-way streets. So treat them as one-way streets. That's the reason they have arrows. So that's it. I mean, if you look, there is not much. Okay, now we get to the critical part. You have to understand some things that I'm going to say. So the question here is, somebody's going to argue with me. In this case, can we figure out the length of each of can we figure out quickly how long is each one of these paths? Yes. I just add them. Let's do it quickly. Let's take the first one, ADF. Just add the lengths. 10, 13, 23, plus 12, 35. So for a small problem like that, I can solve the problem the hard way by enumerating the paths and by determining the length for each one of the paths. So let's figure out the next one. BEG. So let's see how long is that. 7 plus 4, 11, 14, 25. Last one, this one. 10, 15, 19, 33. Alright, so now we have enumerated all three paths. There are only three paths in this problem, and we're able to enumerate all three of them. So obviously somebody's going to say, what is the solution? Obviously the solution cannot be 33. So what is the solution? Is the solution 25 or 35? So before you answer that, so let me explain to you the difference between this problem and somebody may think we're solving the shortest path problem. So one problem that is related, but is not the problem that we're solving here, is the shortest path problem. The shortest path problem is the problem that you solve on Google Maps, where you put an address, where you live, and you put an address where you want to go, and figures out, tells you, take this street, make a left or right. That's the equivalent here is the shortest path problem. That means Google Maps solves this problem in the background. So you put this, if you put your home address, Google Maps puts that as origin. If you put your destination, puts us there. And they have a street map. They have all the streets, two-way streets obviously in some cases, and one-way streets. They evaluate all the paths and they say, oops, that's the solution. So they say, if you want to go from 1 to 6, go B, E, G. That's what I call the formal term is the shortest path problem. That's the problem that is embedded in Google Maps or MapQuest, all of those software programs. This is not what we're solving here. Why not? Because here we say we want to complete the project. In order to complete the project, you have to complete all the activities. So yes, it's going to take only 25 minutes to do BEG. Is the project done? No, the project is done when all the activities are done. So let me reiterate the point. The shortest path problem is actually the opposite of the project management problem. Because in the project management problem, we're saying how long it's going to take to complete the project. The amount of time it's going to take to complete the project is the amount of time it's going to take to complete the longest path. Because all of those paths are parallel paths. When is the project completed? The project is completed when all three of them are completed. So which one of the three is going to determine how long it's going to take to complete the project? The longest one. So did anybody of you had project management before? What is a formal name for the longest path? How do we call it? Nobody knows?
No.
No, it's called the critical path. So the formal term for the longest path in project management, so let me give you the formal term. So the formal term is it's called the critical path.
Could that be one of our questions in our exam?
Implicitly, yes.
Oh.
So some terminology. what constitutes a project? A project is a combination of activities, interrelated activities. Why interrelated? Because some of them have to be completed before other activities start. So, what is the main objective? To determine we call it to determine the project completion time. That means how long it's going to take to complete the project. Which path determines how long it's going to take to complete the project? The longest path. And there is a formal name. The longest path is called the critical path. So, in a small problem like this, how can we identify the critical path? By enumeration. We list all the paths, we compute the length of each one of them, and by comparing, we say, oops, here's the answer. So what is the quick answer for this project? This project will take 35 time units to complete. Why is it taking that long? Because one of the paths, the critical path, which is always the longest path, is A, B, F, and it's going to take 35 time units. So this is the informal solution to the problem. So obviously now we're down to 5 minutes, we're not going to do it now. So next time we're in class, the final problem, the final material is to solve this problem formally. So let's just wait 1 minute. So I'm going to show you a formal way to solve this problem. Because this way, if I give you a project with 100 activities, it's very hard to enumerate. It doesn't work. Even a genius cannot enumerate a long. So there is a formal way. So what we have left for next class is a formal way to solve this problem by a method which works even if we have thousands of activities. But what is the objective? The objective is still what we did here, to figure out how long it's going to take to complete the project, and which path is the one deciding the length of the project, which is always the longest path, which is called the critical path. So this is the only material left for next week. So next week, I keep on saying next week, next class, 2 weeks from today. So the first order of business when we meet again is to finish this. That will take about an hour. Then the rest of the time I'll do a review. So I'll do a review. By that time I'll decide which problems to ask you in the exam, and I'll do a review. So I'll do a formal review of all the problems that I'm planning to ask you. So the only one that is left not finished is this one. Everything else is the flow shop done. The linear programming formulations, and we also have done the production planning. We did both. So now, if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer. But as I said, first order of business in next class is to finish this. And after we finish this, then I'm going to do a review, no new material. It's just to finish this one. Questions?
How many questions?
Yes, right now, you can leave it over there. And if you don't have it, I gave an option.